Previously, I said that Macross Delta was a super interesting but messy failure, and I still hold that. Yet, everything changed when I watched the movies. Let's start with Passionate Walkure. Aside from the obvious removal of some elements due to the shorter feature film length, most of the problems that I had with the series got totally solved. Every underdeveloped character got cut off and its story elements got connected to main characters. So that one simple change made everything feel much more cohesive and organic, with no huge information dumps needed. Other parts got a little bit expanded, and with just a couple of extra minutes, everything felt much more emotional. It's not quite perfect, but by rearranging, expanding, and removing certain parts of the original series, the story developed in a much more satisfying way. It even managed to sneak in new Valkyrie designs, like a full armor Siegfried, a BF-31 with little dragons, and a Mirage-colored SV-262. I'll go much more in depth about the rearranging of the story later, but suffice to say that I quite like the changes. In fact, I'll dare to say that Passionate Walkure feels like the correct way of presenting Delta's storyline, not the confusing and rushed way the original series delivered it. And well, if the Macross Delta saga ended there, I would be quite satisfied with those changes. It's not the best Macross saga, but it's a solid story. But now that Absolute Live is out, I can definitely say that the whole Macross Delta experience got infinitely better. Zettai Live is everything that I expected from Delta delivered in a super fascinating movie. There are a lot of callbacks to previous noteworthy Macross elements and characters, and even certain bits from the original Delta story gets repurposed in a way that actually makes it important. If Passionate Walkure corrected the story's direction, Absolute Live made the story captivating. So much so that instead of continuing with this introduction, my friends, I'm Absa, and it's time now to explore the fantastic Macross Delta movies, a saga that not only managed to course correct the original story, but also to elevate it to legendary levels. I'm going to talk briefly about the best changes that happened in Passionate Walkure, but most of the exploration will be geared towards the marvelous Absolute Live movie. Oh, and as usual, big spoilers ahead from Passionate Walkure and Zettai Live.
Welcome to Walkure.
I already explored thoroughly the problems that I believe plagued the original Macross Delta, but in essence, the main reason why it felt so over the place was the ambitious scope of its plot, a story filled with main characters, background elements, and even some conspiracies. So two things had to happen: either extend the series to maybe 50 episodes to fully develop every plot thread, or remove all of the fluff. Obviously, redoing the series was out of the question, so for the movie, every extra element that added little to no character or story development was cut off with no mercy. Most of the time, I'm not fond of summary movies since they lose many of the quieter moments that help enrich the setting or the character's motivations. But Delta had too much of those quiet moments with none of the enrichment, so in an exception to the rule, I think that Kawamori made the correct decision of not reimagining the Delta storyline like Do You Remember Love or the Frontier movies, but actually just summarizing it to its very essence. For example, Hayate discovering that his true calling was being a pilot feels too generic and really adds nothing new to his character. So for the movie, he is already part of the Delta flight. Freya, wanting to be a part of Walkure, is kept since it's through her that we learn about Windermere and her connection to Hayate's father, a soldier from the nuns. King Gramia had an interesting past with Ernst Johnson, but other than a cool moment where the student tricked the teacher, it developed into nothing. So here in the movie, Lloyd is the one making the calls from the very beginning. And also, In the series, it seemed that the Windermere Kingdom outsourced everything regarding the research and development to the Epsilon Foundation. That really undermined the brilliant scientific and strategic mind that Lloyd supposedly had. In fact, everything about the Foundation felt super off, like it was shoehorned just for exposition purposes. Here in the movie, the Epsilon Foundation is never mentioned, meaning that everything new about the protoculture is implied to be discovered mainly by the Windermereans with Lloyd at the helm. And with just that simple change, Windermere got a lot more terrifying. To put it in context, Windermere is a small kingdom that was able to not only investigate and understand the protoculture ruins, but also manage to restore the Sigurd Valens, a battle fortress from thousands of years ago, and also complete the scientific ritual on how to use the Singer of the Stars and the Var syndrome to control the galaxy. By giving Windermere all of that credit, the premise of them being an enemy of the galaxy gets super menacing. Imagine the faces of the nuns and chaos officers when they found out that Windermere was rebelling against them. Another thing that got rearranged for the better was the love triangle, which, if I'm being honest, was totally underwhelming in the series. Passionate Walkure completely removed Mirage from the love equation, so Hayate and Freya got very close very soon, and on the other hand, Mirage and Hayate got a little bit more room to grow as pilots, where they indeed had chemistry. I really appreciate that change, but it still left me a little bit sad for her, as she again didn't shine. That more or less changed in Absolute Life, but let's not skip ahead. Speaking of love triangles, Messer's final battle with the White Knight got so much better and ended so much more emotional than in the series. Here, the ace pilot got to see her loved one just one more time before becoming one with the wind. It may be a simple change. In fact, it was probably not even needed. Yet, that couple of extra minutes definitely elevated Messer's death to being almost as memorable as Roy's death. I could continue on enlisting every small change that made Passionate Walkure infinitely more enjoyable and interesting than the original series, but I don't want this video to be annoyingly long, so I'll finish this part by reaffirming that Kawamori did a great job at adapting and rearranging the original story into something much more straightforward that felt cohesive. It was probably not as mind-blowing as Do You Remember Love or as bombastic as Wings of Goodbye, but it definitely felt complete and structured. And not only that, but with Lloyd and the Windermere Rebellion out of the equation, the setting that made all these new contributions to protoculture lore, music technologies and its usages, callbacks to previous Macross elements, and even different Valkyries was left ripe for a new exploration that, when it happened, shook the core of the entire franchise and had every Macross fan out there questioning what exactly is happening in Zettai Live that has Maximilian Genius back on action and piloting a Durandal. And with just one sentence, everybody was hooked. The fate of the Mega Road 1. Ever since the release of Flashback 2012 way back in the 80s, nothing new was ever told of the Mega Road 1. We saw its departure, and over time the story went that a couple of years after it launched, it entirely stopped its communications. That was the story, and nobody else really said anything else. Until Macross Delta, where Mr. Exposition Burger Stone touched upon it and the mysterious Lady M. Yet, that part didn't appear in the compilation movie, so since it was left dangling, everybody just moved on. Who would have guessed that the Mega Road 1 would return to take center stage for Zettai Live? The movie starts almost immediately after the Windermere Rebellion, with King Heinz accepting the peace treaty with the nuns and Chaos. Many Windermereans are still unsure of interspecies relationships, but most of them are friendly towards human. Most of them. Bogue Convert, the Crimson Knight, is still slightly hostile towards humanity, particularly towards Hayate, and he definitely frowns upon Freya's relationship. After the declaration of peace, everyone is hanging out in Freya's hometown and having sort of a welcome home party. Everyone is mingling and having a blast, with the occasional racist even getting stopped by a very disgruntled Crimson Knight. And just when the scene borders on getting boring, the main antagonist that was presented at the very beginning of the movie finally appears over the Windermere sky. The organization's name is Heimdall, and with its Battle Astra along with the AI-powered SB-303 Vivasvat, they start to wreak havoc all over the place, not only managing to outmaneuver the aerial knights, but also outpower the Seeger Valens, thus neutralizing the whole Windermere elite army in a matter of minutes. Chaos and the Delta Flight tried to help, but they also were no match for the Quantum AI Siren system, an artificial intelligence technology so advanced that makes Sharon Apple look like a baby. Such was the overwhelming power of the Battle Astra that the whole town had to flee to a safe zone, and just when the feeling of hopelessness and despair was starting to win the hearts of Walkure, the Delta Flight, and the surviving aerial knights, the Macross Gigasion manages to enter the Windermere atmosphere and rescue most of them. The Macross Gigasion is a Macross-class battleship sister to the Macross Elysion, so it's quite big, yet it moved as swiftly and as beautifully as a bird. The reason for that is that the Gigasion is the newest vessel helmed by none other than the legendary ace pilot and commander Maximilian Genius, along with his trusted archivist Exedol Forum. Just that, at least for me, was a fantastic moment. Max is my favorite character. He wears glasses, just like me, so way back when I first saw him, I was totally marveled at the fact that the best, most genius pilot was a dude with glasses just like mine. Anyway, leaving my nostalgia aside, when everybody's treated and back on their feet, Max proceeds to explain more or less what exactly happened. Heimdall is the passion project of Ian Cromwell, a nonce veteran who went rogue when the UN Space rejected AI, cyber prosthetics, and even cloning for military purposes. He wants to bring all of that technology back, and is trying to prove the point by destroying the main culprit behind the banning of such technology, Lady M. According to him, ever since Lady M started to guide humanity, a lot of blood has been shed and many lives were lost. Lives that didn't need to vanish if the use of certain technologies were permitted. For him, Lady M is hindering the children of the protoculture. So now, armed with technology provided by the Epsilon Foundation and the hijacked protoculture ruins discovered by the Windermere, he is able to pinpoint the exact location of Lady M and finally fulfill his goal. But here's the crux of the matter. Lady M is not a she, at least not a she in a conventional sense. It is unknown if it's an individual or a group. In fact, nobody is sure if it's an intelligent life form, but the truth is that Lady M stands for Lady Mega Road 1, the same Mega Road from Flashback 2012, the SDF-2 Mega Road 1. This is a tremendous revelation that not even Max nor Exedol can fully comprehend, but at least they can safely say that it's not an enemy. Chaos was formed by Lady M, and through cryptic and coded transmissions, she has successfully guided mankind in their travels through the stars. But Cromwell wants to destroy that vessel and free humanity from her. The thing is that Kawamori and the crew played the Megaroid card very carefully, as we don't really see anyone inside the vessel. In fact, Exedol confirms that it's stuck between false space and time moves differently there. So everything is still very confusing and inaccessible. AKA, we can really tell if Misa, Minmei or even Ichiyo is there. This, my friends, is a very elegant way of giving us fans what we wanted, yet at the same time not fully resolving it, so there's still potential for future stories. But wow, Max Genius, Exedol Form and the Mega Road 1? Absolutely fascinating. Don't worry, it gets better. After the battle on Freya's hometown, the Delta Flight pilots watch for the first time a Windermere undergo full crystallization and give his final breath. By witnessing this, Hayate now realizes what Bo was telling him. The fact that a Windermere lifespan is completely different from a human lifespan, and that there's no way that a relationship between them can end happily. Another thing that we get to see is that Freya is undergoing crystallization at a much faster rate, thanks in part for her singing prowess. The phrase, "a candle that shines twice as bright, burns half as long," comes to mind. She is in fact strongly encouraged to stop singing altogether. Speaking of singing, the AI system managed to learn a lot from Walkure, so much so that it entered a state of evolution to process and apply the new information. This will eventually lead to the creation of Yami Q-Ray, aka the spiritual successor to Sharon Apple, now in the form of a dark Walkure. It is also here where the new Delta flight, composed by Arad, Mirage, Hayate, Chuck, and the Crimson Knight, starts to train under the tutelage of Max. Let me tell you, words fail to describe how utterly terrific Max's piloting skills are. Along with his YF-29 Durandal, he single-handedly manages to outclass, outperform, and outmaneuver the new BF-31AX Kairos Plus. And this is problematic, as he tells them that the new SV-303 are probably beyond his level, so the Delta flight must be very careful when fighting against the Siren system. What Chaos didn't expect was the use of infiltrated cyborgs inside the Gigasion, with them managing to harm various soldiers and leaving Captain Arad Mulders completely unable to fly a Valkyrie. By this point in the story, we mostly know where everything is leading, as the new plot points that guide the narrative are very clear, but surprisingly full of interesting callbacks. One of them particularly stood out for me: the reintroduction of the Epsilon Foundation. Back in the original Delta show, the Epsilon Foundation felt more like an afterthought, something that had to be rushed in just to justify all of the exposition-heavy scenes. In Passionate Walkure, they were nowhere to be seen, but here in Zettai Live, an agent of them is actually aiding Heimdall. This is a super interesting inclusion that works twofold. By aligning them with Heimdall, we can understand that the Epsilon Foundation is a super shady organization that is willing to join anyone if their price is met. And that they're also willing to do anything, even things outlawed and prohibited, like the use of AI for military purposes, and Heimdall being backed by the Foundation makes Ian's threats all that more menacing. Or as told by Max, there's no greater danger than facing someone with nothing left to lose. This is truly frightening, since it manages to accomplish what the series was missing, presenting the Epsilon Foundation as a super corrupt organization to the point of joining hands with a maniacal ex-soldier that wants to destroy the Megaroid One. This is a great example of showing and not telling. And that accomplishes to reintroduce the remorseless Epsilon Foundation as a potential new threat that can actually match the military might of organizations such as Chaos and maybe the SMS. Having said all of that, let's move on to the final conflict, where Kawamori's original promise of breaking a staple of the franchise finally comes true. The stage is the following. At Windermere, and by using the resonance of the Protoculture ruins, the Battle Astra, along with Yami Q-Ray, is finally able to open the false space that obscured the Megaroid One. And with that, Ian Cromwell can at last deliver the lethal blow to Lady M. In order to stop Heimdall, Chaos formed an assault team held by the Macross Gigasion, and at the front line stands Walkure and the Delta flight. The final battle will happen on the Windermere skies, with the SB-303 backed up by the Battle Astra and Dark Walkure, meaning Yami Q-Ray, while on the other side, Commander Max, along with a wounded Captain Arad, stand as the de facto generals inside the Gigasion, and Mirage, the new leader of the Delta flight. Yet, just before Hayate departs, and in a very moving moment, Freya says that she is also a Walkure member, so she regrets not being able to sing for him. Hayate then tells her that he will return to her and go back to her home planet to plant a new apple tree. What follows next is a very hectic but beautiful dogfight between the AI-powered Valkyries against the full armor BF-31s and the Super Ghosts. I won't go in depth about the battle, yet I will talk about two of the most memorable moments, at least for me. The first is when Maximilian Genius decides to quit being the commander to pursue his one true passion, being a genius pilot. He gives Captain Arad full control of the Gigasion, and aboard his Blue Durandal, he goes into the battlefield to totally obliterate the AI-powered fighters. This is a fantastic scene where we see why Max is called a genius pilot, and it also helps that Ikenai Borderline is playing in the background, so it is a marvelous scene. Pure Macross fan service done right. The other is a much more moving scene where, not caring that her body is on the verge of collapsing, Freya decides to sing once again with Walkure, with her voice finally reaching Hayate, and with that push, he is able to stop the Battle Astra and obtain the Bio AI system. Obviously, a lot more things happen, like Mirage finally figuring out her place as a captain, the Mega Road 1 vanishing again to turbulent full space, and a super interesting makeshift BF-31 with Super Ghost attached, like an upgraded version of the Siegfried with the little dragons that we saw in the previous movie. I'll definitely talk about the mechanical design in another video, since this time it is quite interesting. And just when everything seems to be going a-okay, Freya collapses. Hayate is still able to reach Freya, and they even state that they love each other, yet it's too late for her. The strain of singing depleted her remaining life force. So, in a super crude and poignant moment, Freya crystallizes in front of everyone. And let me tell you, I was definitely not expecting this. I mean, it was bound to happen, but I didn't expect it. I mean, ever since the original Super Dimension Fortress Macross, the franchise has never been afraid of death. In fact, I really thought that Max was going to die, since they implied that his heart is not that of a youngster anymore. But in the end it was Freya. She's now gone and Hayate is left alone. The once love triangle that seemed to be resolved got broken forever. In a masterful move that feels very organic, Kawamori finally managed to break one of the main pillars of the franchise. And if the movie would have ended there, it would have ended on a very somber note. It actually doesn't. The Siren system gave birth to a Freya clone or Freya child or something like that who ends up with Hayate. And honoring his promise to her, Hayate is last seen with the Windermere child in the apple orchard. Zettai Live is a fantastic movie that, in my opinion, elevates the Delta saga into new heights not since maybe the expansion of the Macross universe with Plus. It is a great story that has something to please longtime fans and even new ones. Every character shines at least in one or two scenes, and the callbacks to previous sagas are plenty but carefully placed so that it doesn't alienate newcomers. This is how you move the story forward. This is how you disrupt a franchise staple. This is how you keep a 40-year-old storyline alive. And my friends, I'm absolutely looking forward to the next Macross entry that hopefully blows our mind again. Have I said that I quite like the movie? Sorry if I repeated like a zillion times that I like the movie a lot, but this is probably the first time ever that I get to experience a new Macross entry in almost real time. Hopefully both Delta movies sometime soon get to Western theaters, because they surely deserve it. With Absolute Live, the Macross Delta saga comes to a close, and to be honest, I really don't know where it will go. A lot of things have happened in the years surrounding the 40th anniversary of the franchise. The most important one being that the license for Macross is mostly free from Harmony Gold. Except, well, the original And Do You Remember Of. That's probably the main reason why Bandai decided to start the high-grade line with the YF-19 from Plus. Story-wise, the other important thing that has happened was the Labyrinth of Time short film Frontier, where things happen that I won't spoil and it ends with a cliffhanger. Will Kawamori address that cliffhanger and or the Megaroad one? Well, hopefully, but I don't think so, at least not right now. What I'll do say is that I'm very satisfied with what's happening with the franchise, and I do hope that we'll get a new entry soon enough. Maybe this time we'll get a singing duet like in Macross 7 and a female ace pilot like Mireia, but who knows. Anyway, I'm taking too long to close this video, so tell me, did you enjoy Zettai Live? Who is your favorite character or characters, and what was your favorite Valkyrie? Please leave them in the comments, and as you may or may not know, my name is Absa, and we can continue the conversation over at Twitter, where you can follow me at Absalonicas, and on Instagram, where I post pictures of my figures, my cats, and sometimes even myself. I'll be trying to talk more about anime, comics, and mechanical design, definitely mechanical design, but via model kits, or maybe choking, I really don't know, but I do want to keep talking about robots. Until next time, always remember that in fiction lies power, so let's use it to forge a new type of story, our hero's journey.